All right, P.A.S. report listeners, the holiday season is here. Why not make your life easy and choose design-it-yourself gift baskets? Whether it's a gift for that special someone, family, friends, employees, corporate clients, you don't have to rack your brain anymore. These gift baskets are perfect for any person. At designityourselfgiftbaskets.com, gift baskets can be fully customizable, or you can choose hundreds of pre-arranged gift baskets. Design It Yourself gift baskets are festive for the holiday season, whether it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, and you can be sure that these beautifully decorated gift baskets will make anyone feel appreciated. No matter who you're shopping for, go to designityourselfgiftbaskets.com. And best of all, you get to save money. P.A.S. report listeners can get 10% off your order using code P.A.S. at checkout. So go to DIYGB.com, find the perfect gift this holiday season, and use coupon code P.A.S. at checkout to get 10% off today.
Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast. The P.A.S. Report provides an honest analysis on the critical issues that matter to you without the biased media filters. Here's your host, Professor Nicholas Giordano.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano, and we are now less than a week away from the midterm elections. You have Democrats in full panic mode. The polls keep trending in the Republican direction. And the main question is going to be, how are the undecideds going to break? Are they going to break for the Republicans, or are they going to break for the Democrats? If we are to take a snapshot of the polls, there are several critical races in the House, the Senate, and the gubernatorial races where the candidates are only 1 or 2 points apart. This is not to say that the polling is accurate. I see some major flaws. I see the warning signs. It's like 2020, 2018, and 2016 all over again. They keep on making the same mistakes. However, if I were to take the polls as they currently exist, if I take them at face value, and I see undecideds, and the undecideds are anywhere between 4 and 7%, depending on the poll you're looking at. In some cases, it may be as much as 10%. How the undecideds break will be the deciding factor. To be honest with you, I don't know how anyone is undecided at this point. With everything going on, you may not love some of the Republican candidates, but what we got isn't working. Your life has become much more difficult. So how people are still undecided is bizarre. But in any event, I digress. This election, it's rather simple. And I said it last week. You're either satisfied with the way things are going and you want to continue down the path we're currently on, or you are ready to make a change. You are thoroughly disgusted at what's going on. Your economic livelihood has all but vanished, forcing you and your family to make some really tough decisions. Your safety is at risk as your community continues to deteriorate. It is that simple. That's what this election is about. And here's the thing about undecideds. If you are still undecided, you already made up your mind that you're not voting for the party in power. You're not voting because you don't like what's been going on. That's why you're still undecided. So it comes down to whether the other side has persuaded you to vote for them or whether you're going to sit this election out. That's what it really comes down to. There are so many things going on, and I'm going to be all over the map in this episode. I want to talk about last week's debates. I want to talk about the potential for a diesel fuel shortage and a railway strike that virtually no one's talking about. Very few outlets are even bringing it up. I want to talk about the curious case of Paul Pelosi. All these things directly tie into the current political leadership and how these have the potential to shape the midterm elections, because they do. They can reshape the midterm elections. Before I get to it all, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you find the show informative, share it with your family, your friends, put it on social media. And I want to hear from you. So write a review on Apple Podcasts or drop me an email, podcast@pasreport.com. And just a brief announcement. So yesterday you might have been strolling to the channels and got on Dr. Phil, and then all of a sudden you saw my face. Yes, that was me. I was on Dr. Phil talking about the collapse of the education system. They read the piece that I wrote, several pieces I wrote for campus reform, so they invited me on to talk about this miserable failure the state of academia is in. And so check it out. I have the link up at the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com. So check out Dr. Phil. Very nice guy. Enjoyed my time there, and hopefully we do a follow-up episode on the solutions to the problem, because the education system can be fixed. So now jumping into this episode, I want to kick things off by bringing up a few observations from last week's debate. I want to start with the Zeldin Hochul debate here in my great state of New York. After watching this debate, it's no wonder Empress Hochul has been avoiding Lee Zeldin for so long. It's no wonder she didn't agree to 3 or 4 debates. It was a pathetic display. She kept on bringing up Trump, January 6th, guns, and abortion. That's what she kept bringing up. She has nothing else. I mean, first of all, abortion is not changing in New York State anytime soon. We're still going to have a Democrat assembly. Even if we have a divided government, things like that aren't going to change. He can't change it with the snap of his fingers. So it's kind of irrelevant, even though there are some one-issue voters on that issue. When it comes to guns, she kept on saying, well, guns are being brought from Virginia and other states to New York, and that's why we're seeing all these gun crimes. No, first of all, most of these are illegal firearms. They're not firearms coming in from other states. Secondly, and the one thing I wish Zeldin would have pointed out, is then why isn't the Attorney General and the District Attorney enforcing the gun laws we already have on the books? First of all, it's illegal to transport firearms over state borders. That is a crime. So why aren't we enforcing these crimes? That would be a federal crime, so that would be the Department of Justice. But on the state level, we are seeing prosecutors and district attorneys drop gun crimes. Why are they doing that if they care so much about guns? It's because they don't really care, because they're all frauds. Trump, January 6th. Oh my God, enough is enough. I'm so sick and tired of hearing about January 6th. It was a one-day event that lasted a few hours. Hundreds of people have been arrested, and most of them have been arrested for trespassing. It wasn't an insurrection. It was a riot. Should it have happened? No. It should not have happened. We all acknowledge that. But they want to keep on harping it because they have nothing else. And she couldn't answer any questions. She couldn't defend her record. She couldn't defend suspending state contracting awards to reward her donors. She couldn't answer questions on the high cost of living. She couldn't answer questions on the failed education system or the surge in crime. Congressman Zeldin was on message, constantly bringing up crime and correctly tying it to the bail reform. And that was supported and passed solely by Democrats. He pointed out the Democrat messaging when it comes to defunding the police. He talked about the failed education system and parent choice. He talked about the abuse of power and the overuse of mandates. He talked about lowering the cost of living so people aren't priced out of New York. Those are all issues that matter to New Yorkers, all the issues that matter to New Yorkers. But the debate did reveal exactly who Kathy Hochul is and exactly how the Democrat agenda is an absolute disaster. It revealed how out of touch she is with the plight of ordinary people. And I want to play 2 sound clips. They tell you everything you need to know about her. Before I play the first clip, let me set it up for you. Zeldin kept on bringing the conversation back to crime and bail reform. That's a smart political move. People are concerned about it. It's happening all over the place. We're seeing it with our own eyes. We're hearing about it. So it's smart politics. He knows people are concerned. He knows that it's one of the top issues for a lot of people, that crime impacts everyone, regardless of political ideology. People want to feel safe in their communities. They want to feel safe in their homes. And this is an issue that has the potential to create massive crossover voters, those going from the independent or the Democrat Party to the Republican, voting Republican, because they're so fed up. So it was very smart for Zeldin to focus on this. At one point in the debate, Hochul got so flustered that she ended up saying this.
It thinks that right now there's a polio emergency going on, but there's not a crime emergency. Different priorities that I'm hearing from people right now. They're not being represented from this governor, who still, to this moment, we're halfway through the debate, she still hasn't talked about locking up anyone committing any crimes.
Okay.
Anyone who commits a crime under our laws, especially with the change they made to bail, has consequences. I don't know why that's so important to you.
That was a stunning response, and she said 2 things that are very revealing. Notice how when she says everyone that commits a crime, there will be consequences. Pay attention. Did you notice how she didn't say that we'll throw them in prison? Notice that she didn't say they're going to go to jail so that they can't re-victimize the same community over and over again. It tells you a lot that she won't even bring up the word jail, prison, convicts, criminals. The second thing she said when it came to bail reform and crime was how she doesn't know why crime is so important to you. That's what she said to Congressman Zeldin. See, you, the peasant class, keep harping on surging crime. But why? Why? Don't you see how good these policies are for you? This is where you see how out of touch these elitists are. That's what it is. It wasn't a secret that Zeldin was going to bring up crime and the policy that allowed crime to metastasize, like bail reform. This was no secret, yet she failed to prepare to have a decent and coherent response, and it shows you she's either lazy or doesn't think that crime is that big of a problem. That's what it shows. In the second clip, she was asked about mandatory COVID vaccinations for children and students. And here's what she had to say about that. Take a listen.
So would you mandate a COVID vaccine for children or no?
Not at this time. I'm going to talk about parental control over this, but I'd also say it's something that comes down to the legislature anyhow. The legislature makes a determination in consultation with health experts for next year's school year. You're talking about this year. We're not talking about mandating a vaccine for children in school at this time.
This was another sound clip with two important nuggets telling you exactly who she is and what she wants to do. Notice how she says, we're not talking about mandating a vaccine for children in school at this time. The key words being at this time. So there are a couple issues with this. The first issue with the clip is that she's a flat-out liar. She could care less what parents think. If she cared what parents think, she wouldn't have masked up kids for 2 years, which was cruel, inhumane, and in my opinion, it was criminal. But more importantly, she says only the legislative body can pass a law requiring vaccinations. If she respected the state legislative body and believed only they have the power in these matters, then she wouldn't have mandated decree after decree. She wouldn't have acted like a little Mussolini wannabe, and she wouldn't have constantly renewed her emergency powers. If she truly had respect for the system of checks and balances and the separation of powers. The truth is, she doesn't respect the constitutional process. She doesn't respect the system of checks and balances or the separation of powers. She wants to rule by decree. And a lot of politicians and officials became drunk with power during the pandemic. But that's the people's fault. That's our fault because we actually allowed it. You know she has every intention on mandating this vaccine if she wins the election. She is someone who calls her vaccine followers apostles, saying that the vaccine was a gift from God and they must spread the message of the vaccine's word. For God's sake, she wears a vaccine necklace that says vaccinated. Talk about a loser who is personally vested in pushing the vaccine. Of course she will mandate it. But she knows it's going to be unpopular. That's why she won't admit it before the election. She knows it's not good politics to say that she's going to mandate the COVID vaccine on children. And I know plenty of vaccinated people who are Democrats. They're staunch Democrats, one of the real hardcore COVID people, and they say they will never make their child get the shot. So she knows, and that's why she needs to go. New York cannot survive another 4 years with this failure of a leadership in office. We can't do it. We have to make a change. And listen, some of you out there, you may be Democrats, you may not like the Republicans, you may not like the Republican platform, but just give it a shot. Okay, you're still probably going to have you're going to have a Democrat legislature here in New York. So what's the worst that happens? We get a divided government and we stop some of the insanity? Don't be so ideological and just vote based on political party. The current Democrat agenda is failing. Until they retool it, you should punish them. When it comes to the Fetterman-Oz debate, another disaster. And it was also revealing. Every single Democrat voter should be furious with the Democrat Party. It's amazing. Why am I telling Democrat voters the way they should be? They should be furious with the Democrat Party. Now, I'm not going to play any clips from this debate. I'm not. Because to me, it's just cruel at this point. However, throughout the debate, Fetterman was mostly incoherent. Those around Fetterman should be ashamed of themselves. Watching this debate, I couldn't help but think how horrible, cruel, and soulless these people are that they would actually put him out there like that. In life, some things are far more important than politics, and there is something called human decency. Fetterman should not have been on that stage. He should not be in this race. He clearly hasn't recovered from the stroke. He has cognitive issues, but they don't care. The Democrat leadership does not care. And they took a page out of the elder abuse that they're inflicting on President Biden. They took a page out of that playbook, that the office is more important than the well-being of the person holding the office. See, this isn't me being ableist, because that's what the critics like to say. It has nothing to do with being an ableist. It has nothing to do with disabilities. This is about people who are unwell, not fit for office, and are being exploited by those around them. That's what it's about. And every Democrat should be furious. Fetterman had the stroke before the primary. They could have told him that now is not your time. Go, recuperate, recover. See, they have an obligation to Pennsylvania Democrats to put up a candidate that could fight for Pennsylvanians and represent them well in Congress. Even after the primary, they could have pulled him from the ticket and given it to Connor Lim, but they didn't do that because they didn't care enough about the Democrat voter. They didn't do it because they don't like you. They only care about the office. To them, as long as they have a vessel, that's all that matters. It's truly repulsive. And if that was a Republican candidate, I would be thoroughly disgusted. I would stay out of race. I just wouldn't vote, even if I didn't like the other candidate. I just either wouldn't vote or I'll just write in a candidate. I can in good conscience, and this is me personally, I can in good conscience send someone to public office when they're unwell like that. I just can't do it. It's disgusting. It's abuse. And the fact that so many ordinary people will still vote and support Fetterman shows you just how ideological people have become. I heard someone say that they're still going to vote for Fetterman because even a Fetterman with 30% capacity is still a million times better than Oz. Think about what you're supporting and think about how sad that is. Truly astonishing. And think about what it says about you when you say something like that, when you say something so stupid like that. Now, I do believe that there are going to be a lot of people, after watching that debate, that are considering, at least reconsidering their support for Fetterman. The question is how many? Is it going to make a difference? We'll have to wait and see. But these were the main debate observations that I have, and I do believe that these debates were enough to move the needle. We're going to find out whether they did in less than a week. I mean, it's almost here. Almost here. Another major issue that hasn't received nearly the attention it should or deserves has the potential to lead to a complete economic meltdown overnight, a catastrophe, is the potential for a diesel shortage. According to reports, our diesel fuel inventories are at their lowest levels since we started keeping records in 1982. Inventories are so low that there are estimates we only have about 20 or 21 days left. I mean, that's frightening. That's really scary. And the reason it's so scary is because running out of diesel fuel will be a catastrophe on several levels. Think about how most products are delivered. Oh, but I don't have a diesel car. I don't use diesel fuel. Yeah, but most products are delivered using diesel trucks, and this will bring the trucking industry to a standstill. And this standstill will be at the worst possible time where our economy is already teetering, and it's now the holiday season. Second, as it begins to get colder, if diesel fuel is in short supply, this could lead to homeowners not being able to heat their homes. Families are already struggling, and this is the last thing they need. A shortage is certainly going to cause price increases. It's the basic law of supply and demand. People's budgets are already stretched thin. Families are already having to make really difficult financial decisions that impact their overall well-being. And if we run out of diesel fuel, it's going to make everyone's life that much more difficult. It's going to be a complete disaster. And there are several reasons that we've seen stockpiles dwindle. There's usually higher demand this time of year. This occurs every year, both in the spring and the fall, because of planting and harvesting seasons within the agricultural industry. Refineries typically undergo maintenance during this time of year before the weather gets too cold. But compounding the problem is the fact that only a handful of refineries have been built over the last 40 years. And the refining capacities are not enough to keep up with the growing demand. It's nearly impossible to build new refineries because of all the rules and regulations, especially the environmental regulations, and then the years of litigation from those who want to stop these projects. Think about how much our country has grown since the last major refinery was built in 1976. In 1976, our population was 220 million people. Today, our population is pushing nearly 350 million people. Think about the number of increase in businesses, cars, trucks, homes, so much more. We should have increased refining capacity, but we didn't increase it nearly enough. And now it's coming home to haunt us because now that you got Russia's war in Ukraine, that's also impacted supplies and energy markets. It's like the perfect storm. And I want to be clear, I don't think we're going to run out of diesel. I think suppliers are going to try and pick up the slack, but I do believe we are going to see sporadic shortages and much higher prices when it comes to diesel. And if prices increase when it comes to diesel, that's going to increase for everything. Every product on the market will increase in price at a time where inflation is already at crazy highs. What makes the problem even worse is the potential for a railway strike in the United States. Like just when we don't need anything else, just when you think like enough's enough, here we go. Think about how goods are moved throughout the United States. You got the trucking industry and the railway industry. And think about what a strike would mean at the same time there's a diesel shortage. You would see the already struggling supply chains completely collapse. It would be an economic disaster. And again, it wouldn't take months to feel the effects. The effects would be immediate and they would be devastating. What I don't understand is that the railway workers were offered an amazing deal. The Biden administration offered them a 24% increase in pay. And that's retroactive. How many people can say they got a 24% raise? I mean, damn, I've been getting a 1 or 2% raise over the last several years. If my union president got us a 24% increase in pay, I'd call for him to be the union president for life. According to reports, the workers rejected the contract because it didn't address sick days. They are demanding 15 sick days, which is actually a lot. I mean, not for nothing. But negotiations have to be a give and take, right? And this is where the unions hurt themselves. While the railway workers deserve sick days, there's no doubt about that. They don't have any right now. 15 days, that's insane, especially with a 24% increase in pay. And if a strike does happen, how many people are going to look that deep into why the contract negotiations fell apart? I mean, once again, optics plays a role in politics, but these people obviously have no clue about optics. People are going to hear that the unions rejected a 24% increase in pay. And most people are going to see that as greedy, especially since most people haven't seen substantial pay increases in quite some time. Who do you think ordinary Americans are going to blame if a strike happens and the supply chain collapses? They're going to blame the unions that rejected the 24% increase. So unions better open their eyes. When you get a deal like this, you take it, especially in the day and age where most union workers are getting these measly 1 to 2% increases. It's amazing how they just don't understand how the court of public opinion, how important it is. But this is certainly a situation to monitor, and you would think the press would talk more about it. I can't understand why they haven't. But I will keep you posted on any developments. Let's face it, in our busy lives, we don't eat enough fruits and vegetables. In fact, according to the CDC, only 1 in 10 Americans are eating the recommended daily amount of fruits and vegetables each day, missing out on essential vitamins, minerals, fibers, and antioxidants. And that's where Balance in Nature comes in. Balance in Nature sources only the best produce, free from pesticides, heavy metals, and harmful bacteria. And Balance in Nature is the best fruit and vegetable product on the market. They use only fresh, whole fruits and vegetables inside each capsule. They don't use any GMOs, fillers, binding agents, or preservatives of any kind. I would never endorse a product that I don't use myself, and since using Balance in Nature, I feel more alert, I have more energy, my focus is sharper, and I feel great. Live life to the fullest and choose Balance in Nature. P.A.S. Report listeners can get 35% off the first preferred order. Start getting the recommended daily amount of fruits and vegetables you need by using code PAS at balanceofnature.com. All right, now it's time to get to the curious case of Paul Pelosi. This case gets more bizarre by the day, and there are more questions than answers. On Monday, I released an episode where I spoke with congressional candidate George Santos. He's running for New York State Congressional District 3. If you're in that district, you got to vote for the guy. He's a great guy, great interview. Suggest you listen to it. However, before the interview, I talked about the attack on Paul Pelosi. And when I recorded the episode on Friday morning, there wasn't much that we knew. All we heard was that the attacker was screaming, "Where's Nancy? Where's Nancy?" We are now several days into the story, and there are far more questions. Far more questions. Everything does not appear quite as it seems. There are so many holes in this story. We were initially told that this was some far right-winger influenced by QAnon. We were told that they were in their underwear wrestling on the ground when the attack happened, and we were told the attack was politically motivated. Since then, we've learned a few things, and the question of security remains the top question. Speaker Pelosi is the second most powerful person in the United States. She has round-the-clock security with a personal security detachment. Her personal police protection is the Capitol Police. She also receives security at her home. Coordination exists between the Capitol Police and the local PD. I also tried to find out whether the Pelosi's use private security to protect their home, which I haven't been able to verify, so I don't know if they do it or they don't. She lives in Pacific Heights. It's a very ritzy area, and I would say it's safe to assume that they have at least an alarm system on their home. And we have to ask, why wasn't the alarm triggered when the assailant broke into the home? That's certainly a question that's worthy of asking, and it's a question that needs to be answered. It's also safe to assume that there are probably security cameras all over the property to secure the perimeter. Oh, wait, we don't have to assume that. She had 28 security cameras surveilling the property. Now, I don't know if they used the same contractor as the federal prison that Epstein was in, and all the 28 cameras just went dead, or, which is more likely, that they do have the video surveillance. So the next question becomes, why hasn't video surveillance of at least the break-in been released? It's odd. Wouldn't you at least show the break-in and how the perpetrator entered the home? It's strange, really strange, that there would be no protection measures to secure the speaker's home even if she's not there. And I want people to really consider this. Even if she's not there, the reason to secure the home, even when she's not there, from a governmental perspective, is the fact that she's the second most powerful person in the United States. She's an intelligence goldmine. Don't you think if she doesn't have security on her home, don't you think foreign intelligence agencies would love that? They would love to infiltrate her home, plant listening and video devices everywhere. Another reason, if nobody's home, Well, wouldn't a terrorist organization love to go in there, plant some explosive devices, dangerous people, plant it in her home? So her home is secured as the second most powerful person in the world, even if she's not there. Don't believe any of the BS that's out there that just because she wasn't there, that there wasn't security on the home. The home is monitored at all times. So the question is, how did this happen? How did this encounter happen? The idea that the home isn't constantly being monitored by security and law enforcement is completely ludicrous. How did this unfold? So that brings us to the next series of questions. And these questions revolve around the assailant and the media itself. When the assault first happened, we were told that this was a right-wing extremist, a domestic terrorist, an ultra-MAGA influenced by QAnon. However, the more we find out, we realize that wasn't really true. And we have to ask, who is David DePappy? Well, it turns out that he's an emotionally disturbed person, has been for years. He's a drug addict, and his ex-girlfriend stated, quote, he is mentally ill. He has been mentally ill for a long time. She went on to recall an incident where he went missing for like a year, and she said, quote, he came back in very bad shape. He thought he was Jesus. He was constantly paranoid, thinking people were after him, and it took a good year or two to get back to, being halfway normal. She also said that he isn't a right-winger like the mainstream press is trying to push. She stated, quote, he didn't have any experience in politics, and he was very much in alignment with my views, and I've always been very progressive. I absolutely admire Nancy Pelosi, end quote. We've learned that he's an illegal immigrant from Canada who overstayed his visa. He was living in a bus. He was basically homeless, living in a garage with someone else, had Pride and BLM flags and signage. To top it all off, he was a nudist as well. The whole thing, it really is bizarre. And I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people on the right. I know a lot of Republicans and conservatives. I have never come across a nudist Republican drug addict championing BLM. It just doesn't happen. This guy was an emotionally disturbed individual. He was an unstable person, and it's something we are seeing more and more of. However, the question needs to be asked. Why did the media and others lie? Why did they make it like this person was right-wing extremist? They blatantly lied to us, and the question is why. Also, why haven't we seen this guy's rap sheet, right? How many arrests does he have? Why haven't we seen that? But it gets weirder. According to reports, Paul Pelosi took the elevator to get upstairs and away from the assailant. Now, I don't have a personal elevator in my home. We have what's called stairs, and we just walk up and down them. We can't afford an elevator in my home. So I'm not sure what home elevators are like, but I would assume that all elevators have the same safety features, and one of those safety features for code compliance is the emergency stop. Why wouldn't Paul Pelosi hit the emergency stop switch to prevent the assailant from attacking him where the assailant couldn't get in? Doesn't make sense. As details begin to emerge, we were told that they were both in their underwear with DePappy on top of Paul Pelosi as Paul Pelosi grabbed a hammer and was trying to prevent the attack. According to Politico's initial report, there was someone else in the home. However, outlets now say, no, that was just all your imagination. It was just Pelosi and DePappy in the home. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not, I don't know, but I would like to have the answer to that. Then we were told, when the front door opened, police asked DePappy and Pelosi what was going on, and DePappy said everything was good. That initial story raises a bunch of questions as well. First, how did the door open? Who opened it? Doors don't magically open themselves. Also, if someone is on top of another person with a hammer in their hand, why would police ask what's going on? Why wouldn't they run and tackle the person with the hammer and try and sort everything out afterwards? That makes no sense to me. Police are trained to neutralize the immediate threat. They're not going to sit there and waste time as someone's sitting over someone or on top of someone about to wield a hammer on that person's head. That's illogical. It doesn't make any sense to me. Now, in the last day or so, the story has changed slightly. I was reading a report where it said no one else was in the home, and that it was Paul Pelosi that answered the door. When Paul Pelosi opened the door, police said both men had their hand on a hammer and DePappy's other hand was on Pelosi's forearm. Police asked what's going on. DePappy said everything was good. Police told them to drop the hammer, and it's at that point that DePappy struck Paul Pelosi in the head with it. Again, this doesn't make that much sense either. If the two men were struggling over the hammer, they were wrestling with each other, whether it's standing up or laying down, either one, how would Paul Pelosi open the door for police officers? I mean, if you're fighting over a hammer, it's not like you're going to say to the assailant, hey, just 1 minute, doorbell rang, let me go grab it. I mean, I don't think that's the way it kind of happened. So the whole thing is completely bizarre, and a lot could be cleared up if police body camera footage is released? That would answer so many of the questions, but so far they are refusing to release the body cams. The question is why? Oh, there's so many conspiracy theories floating around. Republicans are engaging in conspiracy theories. Okay, so release the damn body cameras. Put an end to the conspiracy theories. It's really not that hard. None of it makes sense. And when you refuse to release information and the story keeps on changing from the officials, people are naturally going to begin to engage in speculation. They're going to scream cover up. It's as simple as that. So you could stop all this by just being honest and releasing the information, but they won't do that. They're still going to hold their information behind, and people will speculate wildly. We won't get any answers, and people are going to come to their own conclusions based on very little evidence and hearsay. Then they wonder why nobody believes them. It's truly amazing. Immediately, Democrats jumped on this incident, and they had the nerve to say the attack happened because Republicans have demonized Pelosi. They said that Republicans were responsible for the attack and that Republicans are nothing more than extremists. You had former President Obama come out and say this. Take a listen.
Turn dangerous. I want to take a moment to say a prayer for a friend of mine, Mr. Paul Pelosi, who was attacked. 82 years old, was attacked when somebody broke into his home looking for his wife, Nancy. And thankfully, doctors believe he's going to be okay, but we'll let the investigators do their jobs, but here's one thing that we can feel, we know. If our rhetoric about each other gets that mean, when we don't just disagree with people, but we start demonizing them, making wild, crazy allegations about them, that creates a dangerous climate. And if elected officials don't do more to explicitly reject that kind of rhetoric, if they tacitly support it or encourage their supporters to stand outside voting places armed with guns and dressed in tactical gear, more people can get hurt. And we're going to be violating the basic spirit of this country.
He really has some nerve, man. Some nerve. I'll get into it in a minute. But first, I want to play for you a couple of sound bites from the media industrial complex and what they're pushing out there.
Is this political violence, in your opinion?
It seems to be clear that the content of his social media and the statements he allegedly made about where's Nancy, we're going to wait for Nancy, certainly points in that direction.
It seems like there's this effort to normalize this kind of behavior and to make Trumpers feel, at home and prioritize their feelings.
This is about election denialism. What has happened over the last 2 years has seeped into the minds and the thoughts of some unstable people.
Deranged right-wing fanatics, Trump media allies, and some of the most powerful people in the world were feverishly trying to stir up conspiracy theories that distracted from the central political headline of this story. That years of Republican propaganda and Trump-fueled fascism led 42-year-old David DePape to break into Nancy Pelosi's San Francisco home.
Friggin' jackals, that's what they are. So the drug-addicted nudist who supports BLM is now a crazy right-wing extremist. In the words of Joe Biden,
come on, man.
These people have some nerve, and they have become so brazen. Remember, it was former Congressman Alan Grayson that told Americans that Republicans want women, children, and the old people to die quickly. It was Congresswoman Maxine Waters who told her supporters to get in Republicans' faces. Don't let them eat and shop in places. It was Speaker Pelosi herself, who declared Republicans as domestic enemies. Domestic enemies, and this was in September of 2020. It was Speaker Pelosi who called her Republican colleagues the enemies from within. It was Senator Schumer who threatened Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh when it comes to abortion. Many Democratic Party officials have accused Republicans of being racist and misogynist. They have called Republicans evil and dehumanized Republicans. Is the rhetoric harsh? Of course it is. But guess what? Most of them remained silent when Senator Rand Paul was attacked and brutally beaten, resulting in a collapsed lung and broken ribs. This was certainly a politically motivated attack, yet many Democrats remained silent. Some even made jokes about it. They didn't say a peep to condemn the attacks. You had Congressman Steve Scalise nearly dying, getting his hip blown off. And many more congressional Republicans would have died had it not been for Congressman Scalise's security detail. The shooter was a Bernie Sanders supporter. Did the Democrats care about the political rhetoric then? Not for nothing. You just, a few weeks ago, you had an 18-year-old kid that was run over and murdered in North Dakota. The person that allegedly ran the kid over stated that he did so in self-defense because the kid was part of an extremist Republican organization. Are you kidding me? They haven't said a peep about that. That hasn't been on any of the real networks. Truly stunning. And this was after President Biden called half the country fascist. See, they're all frauds. They have no problem ignoring their own rhetoric and constantly demonize their political opponents. It was the President of the United States that gave a primetime address accusing half the country of being the biggest threat to democracy and domestic terrorists, of looking to take down the republic. So excuse me if I don't take these people seriously. They cry about rhetoric, even as they spew their own toxic rhetoric and engage in conspiracy theories like Russian collusion. It's not to say that the right doesn't engage in invective language. Of course they do. But not to the degree that Democrats do. Not to the degree that the media does day in, day out. And it doesn't excuse the behavior of Republicans. But we have to call a spade a spade. Okay, Democrats are far more guilty in this than Republicans are. When it comes to politics, the rhetoric is always harsh. Politics is a blood sport. Always was and has been. However, when we look at the rhetoric over the last decade, there is no doubt that the Democrats have routinely engaged in character assassination and have tried to demonize their political opponents as a bunch of white supremacists, domestic terrorists. So don't give me that nonsense. Don't be fooled. This incident has more to do with mental health and crime, which the Democrats have failed on, than it does with political violence. We continue to see Democrats try to deflect from the crime issue. They don't want to They don't want to talk about it because they know it hurts them. They pretend it's not happening even though it really is happening. They tell you don't believe your eyes, don't believe what you hear, don't believe what you're seeing right in front of your face. But understand that this incident isn't any different than someone being pushed off a subway platform. What makes this incident any different than some random assault that we see happening day in, day out on our city streets? What makes this any different than the senseless murders we're witnessing all over the place? And it's not any different. It's another example of how crime is surging. Mental health issues are metastasizing, and you have a lot of unstable people out there. Then you have those that have absolutely no human decency whatsoever. They have no respect for human life. And ask yourself, what got us to this moment? And the answer is clear. It's the result of failed Democrat policies. Now, the good news is we could spark the change that's needed, and it starts November 8th. And no matter what happens on November 8th, whoever we elected, we have to hold those people accountable and make sure they're doing the right thing. So I hope you found the content of this episode informative. If you did, don't forget to give the P.A.S. report a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Take 30 seconds to write a review. I got a great guest coming in for Monday's episode. You're going to love him. He's phenomenal. So make sure that you tune in. Until then, I want to thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a good weekend out there.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast.
Have a good one. Bye.
Be sure to rate, share, and subscribe to the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Also, visit PASreport.com and follow us on Twitter at PAS Report.